Welcome back to the Economic Sutra. We're diving into some more fascinating economic ideas from ancient Indian texts and traditions. Today, we're brought to you by Audiocast Lab India. They're the ones who make this possible,
Yeah.
Turn stories into sound.
That's right.
So if you've got a story you want to tell, they can help you get it out there.
Absolutely.
All right, let's get back to our journey through time. This is our 6th episode, and we're going to be looking at, labor and guilds in ancient India.
Yeah.
You ever wonder how societies, thousands of years ago built thriving economies? What were their secrets?
Well, that's a question that has fascinated thinkers for centuries. And ancient India, had this really unique approach to it, starting with the Varna system.
Okay.
But before anyone jumps to conclusions, let's be clear, we're not talking about the, rigid caste system that developed later.
Right.
Originally, the Varna system was all about organizing labor, making it efficient, like a blueprint for a well-functioning society.
So not about social hierarchy, but more about dividing up the work.
Yeah.
How that actually, play out.
Imagine, right? You need people with different skills to make everything run smoothly. You need teachers, scholars, warriors, leaders, merchants, traders, and then those who provide essential services, crafts, and so on.
Right.
The Varna system, in its ideal form, it was about making sure that each of these roles was filled by people with the right skills.
Oh, okay. So kind of like a giant team where everyone has their specialty
That's a great way to put it.
and contributes to the overall success.
Yeah. The Brahmins focused on knowledge, the Kshatriyas on defense, the Vaishyas on trade, and the Shudras providing essential services. It was all about maximizing productivity and minimizing, chaos. Everyone plays their part effectively.
That makes sense, like a well-oiled machine. But here's the thing. Having specialized roles, okay, that's one thing. But how do you get all these different groups to actually work together?
That's where the Shrenis come in.
Shrenis.
These were like ancient trade guilds, professional associations, sort of like ancient unions, bringing together people with similar skills and interests.
Okay.
Think of them as the glue that held the different parts of this economic engine together.
So Shrenis.
Yeah.
So what exactly did these ancient guilds do? Were they just social clubs, or was there more to it?
Much more than social clubs. Shrenis had these key functions that were crucial to the economy. First off, they were all about standardizing practices within their trades. Think about quality control, making sure that goods and services met certain standards.
Right.
Imagine a guild of potters way back when. They'd get together and set guidelines for everything, type of clay, firing techniques, even the decorative styles. This ensured consistency and quality across all their work.
Oh, so like a built-in system to make sure everything was up to par.
Exactly.
Okay. Did they do anything else besides setting those standards?
Oh, absolutely. The Shrenis were also really big on training and skill development. They had these apprenticeship systems where younger generations could learn the ropes from the masters.
Yeah.
It was like having trade schools woven into the very fabric of society,
Okay.
passing down knowledge from one generation to the next.
That's brilliant. Talk about investing in the future. So it seems like these Shrenis, they were all about collaboration, not just individual work.
You got it. These guilds were incredibly collaborative. They would pool their resources for those big projects that needed a lot of manpower expertise. Think about, the construction of those massive ancient temples, intricate irrigation systems, fortifying cities. These were impossible, right, without that kind of organized cooperation that the Shrenis facilitated.
Wow. So they weren't just about individual trades. They were about coming together to achieve something bigger. That's pretty inspiring. What else did these Shrenis do?
Well, they also acted as a sort of safety net for their members, offering support during times of hardship, illness, economic downturns, family emergencies, a way of making sure that everyone within the guild had a little security, a way to bounce back when things got tough.
That's really interesting. So they weren't just economic institutions. They had this strong social aspect as well. Sounds like they had a lot of power, a lot of influence.
They did. And here's where it gets really fascinating. Shrenis often had a significant degree of autonomy. They could actually regulate prices and wages within their trades.
Wait, they could actually set prices.
Can you imagine that happening today?
That's wild. It sounds like they had a level of worker empowerment that we just rarely see these days.
It really does.
What's the story behind that?
Well, it speaks volumes about the trust and respect given to these ancient guilds. They were seen as vital pillars of the economy, right? And their input was highly valued.
Hmm.
But there's another layer to this story, one that connects to the very heart of how ancient India viewed work and responsibility. And that's where the concept of dharma comes in.
Dharma. I know that's a complex concept, with many layers of meaning. What does it have to do with labor and economics?
Well, in this context, you can think of dharma as a set of ethical principles that guided individuals and institutions.
Right.
It wasn't just about doing your job, it was about doing it with a sense of righteousness, of responsibility to the community.
So it's like adding a moral dimension to the whole idea of work, of economics.
Exactly. Dharma emphasized honesty, fairness, integrity in all economic transactions. It stressed treating workers with respect, paying fair wages, creating work environments that supported both individual and collective well-being.
Hmm.
It's quite a contrast to some of the dominant economic models we see today,
Yeah.
where maximizing profit often overshadows everything else.
Yeah, you're right. We hear so much about companies cutting corners, exploiting workers, prioritizing profit over people.
Unfortunately, yeah.
It's like the concept of dharma is just missing in those scenarios. But let's shift gears a bit and talk about the contributions of ancient India to various industries. We touched on textiles, on metalwork, but what other areas did they excel in?
Well, agriculture was obviously a cornerstone of the ancient Indian economy, and they were incredibly innovative in that area. Remember those sophisticated irrigation systems we talked about? Step wells, canals,
Yeah.
allowed them to cultivate crops even in regions that were naturally dry. They also had a deep understanding of soil management, crop rotation techniques, helped them get the most out of their land.
It's amazing how they used their knowledge of nature to create such advanced agricultural systems. What about other fields? Did they make any significant contributions there?
Absolutely. Ancient India was a hub of knowledge and innovation. They made significant advances in mathematics, astronomy, medicine, even surgery.
Wow.
Their understanding of metallurgy was incredibly advanced.
Yeah.
As we discussed with the Wootz steel. Have you heard of it?
Wootz steel. Yeah, that rings a bell. But I could use a refresher.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
Well, Wootz steel was this high-carbon steel that was produced in ancient India using a really unique crucible process. This steel was known for being incredibly hard, sharp, able to hold an edge like no other, used to make swords, daggers, other weapons that were highly sought after across the ancient world.
It sounds like they were way ahead of their time when it came to metallurgy.
They really were.
And this knowledge, this wasn't just limited to a select few, was it?
Not at all. Remember, knowledge and skills were passed down through families and those guilds. This helped to ensure that traditions were preserved and shared throughout society, fostering this incredible culture of innovation and excellence.
It's truly remarkable how they integrated, knowledge, skills, and ethics into their economic systems. It's a stark contrast to how, compartmentalized and impersonal many modern industries feel. But before we go any further, we want to remind you that if you're enjoying this exploration of ancient Indian economics, we've got some fantastic books listed in the episode description.
Right.
They'll take you even deeper into this fascinating world.
Absolutely.
Now, back to our conversation.
It is a stark contrast, isn't it? And I think there's a lot we can learn from their more holistic approach. They understood that economics wasn't just about, numbers, profits. It was about people, communities, the well-being of society as a whole.
So as we wrap up this fascinating look at labor and guilds in ancient India, what's the key takeaway you hope our listeners will remember?
The most important thing to remember is that we need to rediscover that human element in our economic systems. We need to move away from models that put profit above all else and start thinking about how we can create systems that are both, economically viable and ethically sound.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We need to bring back those values of Dharma. Honesty, fairness, respect, compassion into our economic transactions. And we need to remember that true prosperity comes not from exploiting others, but from collaborating with them, sharing knowledge, sharing resources, building a more just and equitable society for everyone.
That's beautifully said. And I think it captures the essence of what we've been talking about today. Ancient India offers us this glimpse into a different way of thinking about economics,
Right.
one that's grounded in ethics, collaboration, and a deep respect for the dignity of all human beings.
And as we navigate the complexities of the modern world, these ancient lessons, they can serve as a valuable guide, helping us create a more sustainable, just, and prosperous future for all.
Absolutely. It's really remarkable, how these ancient systems were so deeply intertwined with the social and ethical fabric of society. It wasn't just about economics, it was about living and working in a way that aligned with these deeper values.
It really makes you think about how we approach economics today, doesn't it?
It does, and it raises these questions about what we might have lost along the way. The ancient Indians, they seem to have this understanding that, economic prosperity wasn't just about individual gain. It was about the collective well-being of the entire community.
Yeah. That sense of shared responsibility is definitely something we could use more of these days. But let's talk a bit more about the practical side of things.
Yeah.
We've been talking about these high-level concepts, but I'm curious about how they translated into actual industries and economic activity.
Okay, well, let's take agriculture, for example. It was really the backbone of the ancient Indian economy, and they were remarkably innovative in this area. Remember those sophisticated irrigation systems we talked about earlier?
Yeah.
The step wells and canals
Yeah.
allowed them to cultivate crops even in regions that were naturally dry. And they also had this really deep understanding of soil management and crop rotation techniques, which help them, maximize yields and keep the land fertile over long periods.
No, they weren't just farming.
Yeah.
They were developing sustainable agricultural practices. That's pretty impressive for a civilization that existed, thousands of years ago.
Absolutely. And this ingenuity wasn't limited to agriculture. Ancient India, they made significant contributions to various fields from mathematics and astronomy to medicine and even surgery. Their understanding of metallurgy, as we discussed earlier with the wootz steel, was truly remarkable. They were master craftsmen, innovators in so many areas.
It seems like they had a real knack for combining practicality with creativity.
Mm-hmm.
Did this approach extend to other industries as well?
It did. For instance, let's look at the textile industry. Ancient India was renowned for its exquisite fabrics, especially silks and cotton. The weavers of that era possessed incredible skills and knowledge, creating these textiles that were both beautiful and durable. And these fabrics weren't just for, local consumption either. They were highly sought after in international markets, making ancient India a major player in global trade.
So these weren't just, local crafts. They were driving international commerce.
Mm-hmm.
What made these textiles so special? Was it just the craftsmanship, or were there other factors at play?
Well, it was a combination of things. The raw materials were definitely a factor. India had access to high-quality silk and cotton, which gave their textiles this luxurious feel. But the real magic lay in the skills of the weavers. They had mastered these intricate weaving techniques, creating these complex patterns and designs that were simply unmatched elsewhere. Think about those legendary muslin cloths, so fine that they were said to be almost transparent.
Wow.
These were the products of generations of knowledge and skill passed down through families and guilds, ensuring that those traditions were kept alive.
It sounds like those guilds were more than just, economic organizations. They were keepers of cultural heritage.
Yeah.
Preserving and transmitting those valuable skills.
Exactly. And that cultural element was deeply intertwined with the economic activities. These textiles, they weren't just commodities. They were expressions of artistry, skill, and cultural identity. And that's something that's often missing in our modern mass-produced world.
Yeah, it's true. We often lose that connection between the maker and the object, the story behind the product. But before we go any further, let's take a moment to acknowledge our sponsor, AudioCast Lab India.
Yes.
They're the masterminds behind this podcast, bringing these stories to life. If you have a story to tell, a message you want to share with the world, AudioCast Lab India can help you do it through the power of audio.
Now, getting back to our discussion, one thing that strikes me is how seamlessly the ancient Indians seem to have integrated, economic activity with their spiritual and ethical beliefs. It wasn't just about making money; it was about doing it in a way that was aligned with their values.
Yes, that concept of dharma we talked about earlier seems to have, permeated every aspect of their lives, including their work.
It did.
Yeah.
And it's something we can learn from today. Imagine a world where businesses operated with that same sense of ethical responsibility, where
Wow.
profit wasn't the only driving force. It's a compelling vision, isn't it?
It is, and it's a reminder that we don't have to choose between, economic prosperity and ethical behavior. We can have both if we're willing to re-examine our priorities and embrace a more holistic view of how we live and work. But let's move on to another fascinating aspect of ancient Indian economics. We've talked about labor, guilds, and the importance of ethical conduct, but I'm curious about how these systems dealt with issues like economic hardship and instability.
Yeah.
Did they have mechanisms in place to handle those situations?
That's a really important question, and it might surprise you to know that they did have systems to help mitigate the impact of economic downturns. Remember the Shrenis we discussed earlier, those trade guilds?
Yeah.
Well, they weren't just about regulating trade and promoting skill development. They also served as a sort of social safety net for their members.
So it's like a built-in insurance policy for tough times.
Exactly. During periods of economic hardship, guilds would often pool their resources to support those who were struggling. They might provide loans, offer temporary housing, or even, distribute food and others essential goods to ensure that no one in the community was left behind.
That's incredible. It's like they had this understanding that the well-being of the community depended on everyone being supported, especially during challenging times. Did this concept extend beyond the guilds?
It did. Ancient Indian texts, they emphasize the importance of charity and philanthropy, especially during times of need. Kings and wealthy individuals were encouraged to donate to the poor, support those who were less fortunate. There was this strong belief that societal well-being was a collective responsibility, not just an individual pursuit.
It's heartwarming to see that even in ancient times they recognize the importance of taking care of the most vulnerable members of society. It challenges our modern notions of individualism and self-reliance, doesn't it?
It does, and it prompts us to consider whether our current systems are truly serving the needs of all members of society. Perhaps we can learn from the ancient Indians and find ways to create a more compassionate and inclusive economic model,
Right.
one that prioritizes human well-being alongside material prosperity.
It's a thought-provoking idea and,
Yeah.
and one that's worth exploring further. It really is amazing to think about how these ancient economic systems addressed issues that are, still relevant today. We're so focused on, individual success in the modern world. It's refreshing to see a model that prioritizes the collective good.
It is a different perspective, isn't it? It challenges us to think about the role of economics in society and how we can create these systems that benefit everyone, not just a select few.
Yeah. Makes you wonder if we've lost sight of some fundamental truths about human nature and the importance of community.
Perhaps we have. The ancient Indians, they seem to understand that true prosperity wasn't just about accumulating wealth. It was about creating a society where everyone had the opportunity to thrive, where everyone felt a sense of belonging, a shared purpose.
That's a powerful idea, and
Yeah.
it's one that resonates, deeply with me. But let's shift our focus for a moment. We've been talking about the internal workings of the ancient Indian economy, but I'm curious about their interactions with the outside world. How did they engage in trade and commerce with other civilizations?
That's a fascinating aspect of their economic history. Ancient India was a major player in global trade networks. Their merchants sailed across the seas, establishing trading relationships with civilizations as far as Rome and China.
Hmm.
They were known for their high quality goods, particularly spices, textiles, and precious stones.
So they weren't just self-sufficient. They were actively engaged in international commerce. What impact did that have on their society?
It had a profound impact. Trade brought in wealth, of course, but it also brought in new ideas, technologies, cultural influences. It helped to shape ancient India's worldview and its place in the global landscape. Imagine those ancient seafarers navigating those treacherous waters, carrying not just goods but also stories, knowledge, connections that would enrich their own society.
It paints a vivid picture of a dynamic and interconnected world, doesn't it? It challenges those stereotypes of ancient civilizations being, isolated and static.
It does, and it highlights the importance of understanding history in its full context, not just through a narrow lens. The ancient Indians were not just, philosophers and spiritual seekers. They were also savvy traders, skilled artisans, and explorers who ventured out into the unknown.
It's a reminder that history is full of surprises and that there's always more to learn. As we wrap up this episode of the Economic Sutra, I want to thank you for sharing your insights with us. It's been a truly enlightening journey.
The pleasure was all mine. I hope our listeners have found this exploration as fascinating as I have.
And for those of you who want to dive even deeper into this topic, don't forget to check out the books we've listed in the episode description. They offer a wealth of information and insights into the fascinating world of ancient Indian economics.
And before we sign off, a reminder that next time on the Economic Sutra, we'll be delving into the mysteries of the Saraswati Sindhu civilization, unearthing their unique approaches to trade, innovation, and societal well-being. You won't want to miss it.
Until then, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep seeking those timeless insights that can help us create a more just and prosperous world for all. And remember, if you have a story to tell, AudioCast Lab India can help you make it happen. They're the creative force behind this podcast, and they can help you bring your own audio vision to life. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey.